All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into ancient Greece.
Okay.
We're going to be exploring, one of the big ones. We're going to be exploring Athena.
Sounds good.
So we are primarily basing this deep dive on the Wikipedia entry for Athena. It's pretty extensive. It covers just about everything, her mythology, how she was worshipped, the impact she had, and still has on us today.
Wow.
Yeah. So what we want to do with this episode, with this deep dive, is to kind of cut through all of that information and give our listeners sort of a streamlined path to the core of what's important about Athena.
Okay, yeah. There's a lot there.
There really is. And I think we should start, a natural starting place is her name,
Her name.
Athena, and of course the city of Athens. So the ancient Greeks themselves wondered which came first. Was it the goddess or was it the city named after her?
That is a great question. And the ancient Greek name for this city is Athena. And it's actually a plural form. The myths talk about a sisterhood that were devoted to her there. Modern scholars, though, they kind of lean towards the goddess being named after the city, after the place.
Okay.
And it has to do with the linguistic patterns. The Tidon ending is more common in place names.
Oh, interesting.
So like Mycenae, for instance, the goddess Mycenae, and her sisterhood, the Mycenae, and then Thebes.
Right.
Same thing, Thebe and Thebai. So there seems to be, this sort of tradition of having these goddesses who are associated with these cities.
So, yeah, so these city goddesses, that's a thing.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Interesting. And what's really fascinating is that Athena, this name, it probably predates the Greek language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a morpheme on, and it's thought to be from a pre-Greek linguistic layer. So the sound of her name is really old.
Really, really old.
Really old.
So, we can't really talk about Athena without bringing up Plato.
Oh, of course, yeah, Plato.
He had some pretty interesting interpretations about her name.
He did, yeah, he really dove deep. What did he say?
Yeah. So in his dialogue Cratylus, he connects her to nous, meaning mind,
Okay.
dianoia, meaning intelligence, and even theonoesis, divine intelligence.
Okay, so she, represents the intelligence of the divine.
Yeah, he really dove deep. He also explored the idea that her name might come from Athenoa, meaning godly, and some Greeks rationalize that as coming from theos, deity, and nous, mind.
So it's like she is the mind of God.
Kind of, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that is definitely a, classic Plato there.
Yeah.
Looking deep into the meaning of these names. But, all that aside, what do we actually know about her ancient origins?
Well, if we take a look at the ancient Bronze Age, there's some evidence that Athena might have been a palace goddess. She was in charge of the crafts and protected the rulers. And there's this really cool Mycenaean Greek inscription that was found in Knossos, and it says Etana Potinija, and it's on these linear B tablets.
Okay, so linear B, I know that's a very, very old script.
It is.
From the Bronze Age, right?
Late Minoan II period. So this Athena Potnia, it's often translated as Mistress Athena,
Okay.
but it also could mean Potnia of Athena,
Okay.
or even Lady of Athens.
Oh, wow.
We're not exactly sure, but it seems like there was an association with a divine feminine figure there.
So early on, she's associated with the feminine divine.
Yeah, but the thing is, with this inscription, we're not exactly sure about the connection to Athens, the city, because this inscription is from Knossos, and Knossos is on Crete, which is pretty far from Athens.
Okay, so she's definitely she's a figure. This name, this figure, this goddess is a figure in the Bronze Age. It's not necessarily clear whether or not she was associated with Athens yet.
Right. We can't be 100% sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But, there's also this other inscription, this linear assigned series, Atano Juaja. And these are Minoan tablets. We haven't actually deciphered linear A, so we don't know what they say. But scholars think that it might be related to that linear B inscription that we were just talking about, the Atana Potinia.
Okay.
And it's also maybe related to the term Diuja or Diuija, which is Diuia, meaning of Zeus,
Yeah.
or maybe even another goddess. So if this connection is accurate, it could translate to something like Athena of Zeus
Okay.
or divine Athena. And so that would be a pretty early connection to Zeus, even before, the traditional myths.
Interesting. So it could be that this inscription that we don't know what it means could support the traditional myths about her parentage, but it could also be just like a generic divine Athena.
Exactly. It's like a little puzzle.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that means that she could have predated her integration into the Olympian family tree.
It's very possible.
Yeah. The Wikipedia entry mentions something about theories that link her to bird goddesses and also snake goddesses.
Yeah, there's that too. So Martin Person Nilsson was a scholar of ancient Greek religion, and he suggested that the Minoan snake goddess figurines, they might be early versions of Athena.
Okay.
And he and other scholars also theorized that, in earlier times, she might have been imagined as an owl goddess, or maybe just a bird goddess, generally. You can kind of see that in the Odyssey.
Right.
She famously takes the form of a sea eagle.
Right.
And then Jane Ellen Harrison pointed out that some early art shows her with wings. So it's possible that over time, she kind of transitioned from an animal form into a form where the animals became her symbols.
So, I mean, that's a pretty big change
It is.
from like being the animal to having the animal as your symbol.
Yeah, how people understood her definitely changed over time.
Yeah. What about this Proto-Indo-European goddess and the connection with the Near Eastern warrior goddesses?
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, tell me about this.
So a lot of scholars think that Athena, her worship, retains elements of a Proto-Indo-European transfunctional goddess. And that means that she has like a really wide range of responsibilities. It's not just one specific thing. And it's possible that this worship, it could have been influenced by Near Eastern warrior goddesses
Okay.
like Ishtar
Okay.
and Anat.
Hmm.
Both of them are often depicted in armor,
Okay.
ready for war.
Okay.
And Charles Panglace, he compared Athena to Inanna, terrifying warrior goddess, as he called her.
Yeah.
And they're both associated with creation myths. Some scholars even think that Athena's unique birth from Zeus's head, that might actually be related to the Sumerian myth of Inanna's descent to the underworld.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
It is fascinating.
And then, of course, you have the Black Athena hypothesis,
Oh, right. Yeah.
which was really promoted by Martin Brittle, and he connected her to the Egyptian goddess Neith. He suggested that she was brought to Greece from Egypt, and Neith was a goddess of war, hunting, weaving, and even Plato connected the two of them. But even though this hypothesis was discussed a lot, most scholars today, they don't really accept it.
So we've got this really, really layered and complex origin story for her. Let's talk about, so we talked about her connection to the city, but she's also known by a lot of different epithets.
It is.
And these epithets tell us a lot about her roles and how the Greeks understood her.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the most well-known epithets is Pallas.
Okay, Pallas.
And the origin of this name, it's kind of debated. It could come from a root meaning to brandish, which would refer to, weapons.
Okay, yeah.
But more likely it comes from words that mean youth or young woman. Walter Burkert, who was a scholar of ancient Greek religion, he said that she is the Pallas of Athens, Pallas Athene, just as Hera of Argos is here are ye. So it's like this fundamental connection to Athens.
Okay.
Yeah. So later on, the Greeks, they made up stories to explain this Pallas epithet. One story says that Pallas was actually immortal. She was the daughter of Triton, the sea god,
Okay.
and she was Athena's friend. And they were sparring one day, overseen by Zeus, and Athena accidentally killed her friend. And so Athena took the name Pallas to honor her.
Oh, that's sad.
It's a little bit sad. There's another version of the myth that says that Pallas was a giant, and Athena killed him during the Gigantomachy and used his skin as a cloak. And then there's a less common story that says Pallas was actually Athena's father, and he tried to assault her, so she killed him in self-defense.
Wow. Okay, so three very different explanations for the epithet Pallas.
Three very different stories.
Interesting. And of course, Pallas is also connected to the Palladium.
Yes.
So the Palladium was a statue of Athena.
Right. It was a cult statue,
Yeah.
and they said it was carved by her in the likeness of her friend Pallas.
Oh.
And the Greeks believed that this statue had magical powers.
Yeah.
It protected the city of Troy as long as it was inside the city walls.
Oh, okay.
And of course, there's the story about how it was taken during the Trojan War, and then Athena got really angry.
Right.
So it's a pretty important part of that story.
Okay, another epithet that she has is Glaucopus.
Glaucopupus, yes.
And what's that about?
So Homer actually uses that word a lot to describe Athena.
Oh.
And it usually means bright-eyed or with gleaming eyes. So it comes from the word glaucos, which means gleaming, silvery, and later on it also meant bluish green or gray.
Okay.
And then ups, meaning eye or face. And the Greek word for little owl is glauks, and that shares the same root. And so that's probably why the owl became associated with Athena.
Ah, because of its bright eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The owl has those really striking eyes.
Yeah.
And so this epithet, it not only describes her, but it also connects her to her animal and to the concept of wisdom.
Yeah, right.
Now, there's another epithet, Tritogenia. And this one's a little bit of a mystery. We don't really know what it means for sure. One idea is that it means Triton-born, so maybe hinting at a myth where Triton was her father, or maybe he raised her. Another possibility is that it means triple-born, or third-born,
Okay.
maybe referring to her place in a divine triad. Or she's sometimes considered the third daughter of Zeus. Or it could be that it refers to her unique birth,
Yeah.
involving Mias, Zeus, and herself.
Right.
Some scholars have connected it to the Rigvedic god Trita.
Okay.
He was sometimes grouped with two other figures.
Okay.
And the linguist Michael Jonda suggested that it might be related to this Proto-Indo-European concept of the tripartite division of the cosmos. So Trito might have originally meant the sky, which would fit with her birth from the head of Zeus.
Right, right.
And then there's Diogenes Laertius. He took a more practical approach. He said she was called Tritogenia because 3 things that are essential for human life came from her.
Okay, so basically we don't really know.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But she has so many epithets. I mean, we can't possibly go through all of them.
We can't.
But each one kind of tells us something about her.
Yeah, definitely.
Different aspects of her nature. So like 8 tritone, meaning the unwearying that tells us about her dedication.
And Parthenos, virgin.
Right.
That's one of the 3 great virgin goddesses.
Okay.
Artemis, Hestia,
Right.
Promachos, she who fights in front.
Right. Warrior goddess.
That's the one. Polias, of the city.
Okay.
That shows her role as protector of cities. Ergain, the industrious.
Right. So crafts and things.
Yeah, crafts, skilled work. And after the trial of Orestes, she also got the name Aria,
Okay.
Hippia, of the horses.
Mm-hmm.
She was also credited with inventing the bit and the bridle.
Okay.
And then Chalonitis, the bridler.
Right.
So again, horses. And then there's Aethia, which might be related to shipbuilding or navigation.
Okay.
And then there's Promacorma, which refers to protecting anchorages.
Oh.
And then there's even Hygeia, health, and Mechanitis, skilled in inventing.
Yeah.
So yeah, she has a lot of roles.
So I mean, we're really talking about a goddess who does everything.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, war, crafts, health, intelligence, cities.
Yeah, she really does it all.
Yeah. And all of these roles, they come with symbols, right?
Right. So you have the owl, of course.
Yeah.
The olive tree.
Right, right.
The snake, which is often shown at her feet.
Okay.
And the aegis, which is usually a breastplate. It has Medusa's head on it. And then, the helmet, the spear, the armor. She also has a chariot.
Yeah.
And even the distaff, which is a tool for spinning, which shows her connection to weaving.
Right, right. So I mean, she's powerful, she's wise, she's connected to the arts of war and also the arts of peace. And, it's interesting, she's described as asexual, right, in the Homeric hymns.
Right, along with Hestia and Artemis.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important because it shows their independence.
Yeah.
They're not defined by their relationships with men.
Right.
They're defined by their own domains, their own powers.
Okay, so let's talk about, so we've talked about her symbols, we've talked about her epithets, let's talk about her cults and her patronage.
Okay, sounds good.
So especially in Athens, she was super important. I mean, she was Athena Polias, the goddess of the city, protector of the citadel.
Right, and they had this festival called the Plantaria, the Feast of the Bath,
Okay.
and that was a yearly ritual.
Yeah.
They would cleanse her wooden statue in the Erechtheion.
Oh, wow.
So she was really important to the city's, ritual purity.
Yeah. And she was also Athena Ergain, right?
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so she was celebrated as the goddess of crafts at festivals like Chalcea. And that was especially weaving and metalworking. But later on, that expanded to include intellectual pursuits like philosophy.
Oh, wow. Okay, so she starts out as a goddess of practical crafts.
Right.
And then she kind of evolves into a goddess of thinking,
Yeah, exactly.
of using your mind.
Using your mind.
That's cool. And of course, there's Athena Promachos.
Yes, Athena Promachos, the warrior goddess, leading soldiers into battle.
Okay, so how is she different from Ares?
So she represents more the strategic discipline side of war,
Okay.
whereas Ares is more like, bloodlust, violence.
Yeah.
And she was usually seen as supporting just causes, which made her a lot more popular than Ares.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the Panathenaea and the Pambarosia, those were big festivals,
Yeah.
athletic and military contests. They were held in her honor.
Okay, and then we have Athena Parthenos, who's the namesake for the Parthenon.
Right. Athena Parthenos, the Virgin. So the Parthenon, her most famous temple, gets its name from her.
Yeah.
And Karl Karenyi, he was a scholar of Greek mythology, he said that Parthenos wasn't just about, not having sex. It was also about guarding sexual modesty and protecting ritual mysteries.
Oh, okay.
And then there's that story about the Athenian lady.
Oh,
She appeared to the philosopher Proclus in a dream after they took her statue away.
right.
So that shows you, how important she was to the city spiritually.
Right. And there's also that little thing in there about her being involved with the divination.
Right, yeah. So she was credited with coming up with this method of divination using pebbles.
Okay.
But Apollo got kind of jealous.
Right.
He went to Zeus, complained that she was stepping on his toes, and Zeus shut it down.
Oh, wow. Okay, so even the gods get jealous of each other.
Give him the gods, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about Athens, but she wasn't just the patron of Athens. She was a goddess for all of Greece.
Right, she was Pan-Hellenic.
Yeah.
So cities like Argos, Sparta, Gortyn, Lindos, Larissa, Pergamon, they all considered her to be a pretty important deity. And their worship often mirrored the Pan-Hellenic worship.
Mm-hmm.
And they also had initiation rites for young people.
Oh, okay.
She was often equated with local goddesses, too. So,
Yeah.
for instance, Aphia and Aegina and Alia and Arcadia. And she had this really important sanctuary in Tegea. And then Sparta, big military power, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
They had a temple to her on their Acropolis. And they called her Poliochos, which means city protector,
Okay.
and Kalkiokos, which could mean a few different things.
Okay.
Maybe the cult statue was made of bronze, or maybe the temple had bronze decorations. Even Alexander the Great, he dedicated an Ionic-style temple to Athena Polias in Priene.
Wow.
And in Pergamon, she was a cosmic deity. So she was really important to the city's fate.
Well,
So yeah, even though she's closely tied to Athens, she was worshipped all over Greece.
so, yeah, a truly important goddess. Now let's talk about her mythology. And I guess the most natural place to start is her birth.
Her birth.
And what a birth it is.
Oh, what a birth it is.
She was born from the head of Zeus, fully grown
Fully grown.
and armed.
Armed.
I mean, you can't really get much more unique than that.
You really can't.
Yeah. And the earliest mention that we have of this is in Homer's Iliad. Ares is accusing Zeus of favoritism, and he says, autos aginao, which means you yourself gave birth to her.
Right.
And that seems to imply that she was, created by Zeus alone.
Yeah, no mother involved.
Yeah. But then Hesiod, in his Theogony, he gives us a more elaborate version of the story.
He does.
Yeah. So what's Hesiod's take?
Okay, so Hesiod says that Zeus married Metis,
Okay.
who was the goddess of counsel, and she was the wisest of all beings.
Okay.
But there was this prophecy that said any son born to Metis would eventually overthrow Zeus.
Just like Zeus overthrew Cronus.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So Zeus tricked Metis and swallowed her whole
While she was pregnant?
while she was pregnant with Athena.
Okay.
And so she grew inside of him.
Okay.
And when it was time for her to be born, Metis, from inside Zeus, made her clothes and armor. And Athena started working on her armor.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it was so loud that Zeus got a massive headache.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
It does.
Yeah.
And so, depending on the story you read, either Prometheus, Hephaestus, Hermes, Ares, or Pelamon, they took an axe or some kind of sharp tool, split Zeus's head open.
Right.
And Athena just popped out,
Fully grown,
fully grown,
wearing armor,
wearing armor,
and giving a war cry.
giving a war cry. The first Homeric hymn to Athena describes how shocked all the gods were. Even Helios stopped his chariot. And Pindar says that her shout was so loud that the earth and sky shook.
So, quite an entrance.
Quite an entrance.
I mean, you only get to be born once.
Yeah.
Might as well do it in style.
Might as well, yeah.
Now, how did Hera feel about this? Zeus just creating this powerful goddess without her.
Well, Hesiod says that Hera was pretty upset about this whole thing.
Yeah.
And that she decided to have Hephaestus all on her own without any male involvement.
Oh, wow.
But other stories say that she was actually happy for Athena.
Yeah.
And then Justin Martyr, the early Christian apologist, he had this interesting interpretation. He said that Athena was like Zeus's first thought when he was creating the world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she's not born from, a physical union. She's born from his mind,
Right.
his intellect. And then there are these other less common stories about her parentage. So some say that her mother was Mamides, but by the Cyclops Brontes,
Okay.
or that she was the daughter of the god Dactyl Aitonos, and some Phoenician traditions even say that she was Cronus's daughter.
So lots of different
And
versions.
the versions.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now the myth of her becoming the patron goddess of Athens. This is a classic, divine rivalry story.
Yeah, it really is.
So tell me about that.
So Pseudo-Apollodorus tells us that Athena and Poseidon, they had this contest.
Right.
They both wanted to be the patron deity of Athens.
Okay.
And they agreed that they would each give a gift to the Athenians, and King Cecrops, he would decide who had the better gift. So Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, and depending on what version you read, he either created a saltwater spring, which represented naval power, or the first horse, which represented military might.
Okay.
But Athena, she offered the first olive tree.
Okay.
It was full of olives.
Right, yeah.
And Cecrops, he chose the olive. He was smart. He knew that the olive tree would give them food, oil, and wood. So that's how Athena became the patron goddess of Athens, and the olive tree became the symbol of the city.
Right. So foresight wins out.
Foresight wins out.
And Poseidon did not take this well.
No, he did not. He was not happy about it.
Right.
Robert Graves, he thinks that these stories about the gods fighting, they might actually reflect real conflicts that were happening in ancient Greece,
Oh, okay.
maybe between different religions
Right.
or social structures.
Okay, yeah.
So, maybe there was a shift from worshiping earth gods or sea gods to worshiping gods of agriculture and cities.
Right. So this could be a reflection of an actual historical event.
Possibly, yeah.
Interesting. So how did Poseidon react?
Well, there's one story that says Poseidon was so angry that he sent his son Halorotheus to cut down the sacred olive tree. But he missed and accidentally killed himself.
Oh, no.
And then the tree was called Moria, which means fatal. And Poseidon, he blamed Ares for the murder.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they had a trial on the Areopagus, which is the hill that's named after this event.
Right.
And Ares was found not guilty. And then there's this other older story, kind of disturbing, that says Hephaestus tried to rape Athena.
Okay.
And his semen fell on the earth, Gaia.
Okay.
And that's how Erycthonius was born. And then Athena adopted Erycthonius.
Okay.
And then there's the really important Athenian founding myth about Athena giving the baby Erycthonius to the daughters of Cecrops in a chest. And she tells them not to open it.
Right.
But they disobey her, and they open the chest, and they go mad, and they die. And that story is connected to the Araphoria, which was an Athenian festival.
Okay, so even though she wins the contest, there are all these other kind of dark stories that are happening around the same time.
It's not all sunshine and roses.
Right, right. And so Athena, she was a patron of heroes.
She was.
So who are some of the heroes that she helped out?
Well, in the Iliad, she helps out the Greek warriors. She gives them inspiration. She even fights alongside them.
Okay.
And she shows the more strategic, civilized side of warfare. She's often seen with Nike, the goddess of victory.
Right.
And her aegis is really important here. It has all these images on it that represent, fear, strife, defense, and assault, all the things you need to win.
Right.
And then in the Odyssey, she's the guardian of Odysseus.
Mhm.
She guides him and helps him on his journey home.
Right.
And she also helps Perseus when he has to cut off Medusa's head. She gives him her shield, which is really shiny, so he can use it as a mirror.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she helps Bellerophon tame Pegasus
Right.
by giving him a bridle. And she even gets involved in the trial of Orestes. That's in Aeschylus's play Eumenides.
So she's the mentor, the divine mentor
She really is.
for all these heroes. Are there any specific examples, with Odysseus or Heracles?
Yeah, so with Heracles, she's often shown helping him out with his 12 labors.
Okay.
So, for example, with a Nemean lion, she tells him to use the lion's own claws to skin it.
Oh, wow.
And she also helps him hold up the sky when he has to take over for Atlas.
Right.
She's called his stern ally and the gentle acknowledger of his achievements. She even drives him to Mount Olympus in her chariot when he becomes a god.
Oh, okay.
And then with Odysseus, at first she kind of works behind the scenes. She puts good thoughts in his head, guides his actions.
Okay.
That's why she's called the goddess of nearness.
Right.
But then she starts to get more involved. She appears in Nausicaa's dreams and tells her to help Odysseus when he washes up on the shore.
Okay.
She disguises Odysseus as an old beggar when he gets back to Ithaca.
Right.
So he can, stay safe. And then tell us what you think about this episode. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.